Acharei Mot. Acharei Mot, of course, the name of our Torah portion this week. It means after the death. Then what? Our Torah portion this week, Acharei Mot, is given this name after words that come toward the beginning of the portion, after the death, and it refers to the deaths of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, who back in Leviticus 10, some 6 chapters ago, had drawn too close to God in offering a sacrifice, which God had not called for. And so in response, God sent forth fire, which consumed the sons. After the death, then what? Think how tragic it must have been for Aaron not to lose just one, but 2 sons. It's the wrong order for a parent to watch their child die. Moses, the uncle of these deceased boys, speaks words to his brother Aaron. I'm not sure how comforting his words are. And Aaron is silent. Fast forward to the mid-20th century. Acharei Mot, after the death. After the death of 6 million Jews. As I mentioned earlier in the introduction to our meditation, this past Wednesday night, Thursday, marked Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura, the day of remembrance of the Holocaust and heroism. And after the death of these 6 million Jews, then what? Lots of people were silent for a long time. I was speaking with someone just the other day how in the 1950s, she did not grow up with the education about the Holocaust because people did not talk about it. It was only in 1951 that a resolution was passed in the Knesset and then confirmed into law in 1959, formally creating this day of remembrance. Yet slowly people not only began to talk about the Holocaust, they felt it an imperative to do so and educate others so that never again would we witness the genocide of the Jews. I understand that during World War II, Jews were not the only ones who died. There were millions of others who were also targeted and killed. Yet I grapple. What is the meaning of Yom HaShoah for me as a Jewish person and a member of the Jewish community? This year especially, I've been digging into my heart and mind, questioning what Yom HaShoah means to me and what I think it might mean for the Jewish people. Having read author Dara Horn's recent book, People Love Dead Jews, and listening to her companion podcast, Adventures with Dead Jews, I didn't make up the titles, I've been looking at the Shoah memorials, literature, films, etc., with a different perspective. Horn tells the story of when she was 16 years old in 1993 and was invited to write an article in a teen magazine about her visit to the then new U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. She wrote a rave review of the museum and especially praised the museum's children's section called Daniel's Story. Daniel was meant to look like any American kid. It's a fictional description of a character, and he has soccer cleats hanging in his room and cookies in the kitchen. And the story tells how his life gets worse when new laws and rules force Daniel's family to move into the ghetto, and even worse after that, to Auschwitz. Being a kid's exhibit, the story stopped at the barbed wire. Dara Horn believed at the time that her writing about the humanity of Jews would help send a message of treating the Jews with kindness because they're just like everyone else. How surprised she was when she was randomly attacked for her review by a Holocaust survivor. This survivor, an old woman with a thick accent and a number on her arm, told Horn that a kid on a soccer team was not what died in the Holocaust. She went on a rant about Yiddish-speaking culture, books, theaters, yeshivas, musicians, writers, artists, political parties, religion, youth groups, etc. She shrieked at Horn how she needed to write about what was really lost, that 85% of those people were Yiddish speakers, not German-speaking soccer players, and a huge percentage of them religious Jews. Why didn't the boys' bedroom shelves have volumes of the Talmud, or his scouting uniform from his socialist youth club, or his Hebrew songbooks from the Zionist youth group? Was there even a mezuzah on the doorpost of Daniel's imaginary house? Horn checked later. No. Horn, who was 16 at the time, politely responded to this old woman that the whole point of a museum like this was to teach children visiting the museum that the children who died in the Holocaust was just like them. Then the woman shouted at Horn, "But what if they weren't just like them? Would it have been okay to murder them if they weren't just like them?" After 25 years of avoiding the question, Dara Horn finally responded in this book and her podcast. The title of the book alone, People Love Dead Jews, along with her various responses, have made me think. I thought about my first year as a rabbi when I joined thousands of teens from around the world on the March of the Living experience, in which we walked the path from Auschwitz to Birkenau. I thought about my multiple visits to the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and the Illinois Holocaust Memorial Museum and Education Center in Skokie, both to which I gave donations as a founding member, and Yad Vashem, the new Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, and the Jewish Quarter in Prague, which is home to the Pinchas Synagogue, now a museum, the place from which our Czech Memorial Trust Torah scroll originated. What do these places of memorial and this Remembrance Day of Yom HaShoah compel me to do to honor the day? Well, for one, to remember the victims. And what an unfathomable task to remember 6 million? Yad Vashem, the premier Holocaust museum of the world, only has about 4.5 million names. I remember one Yom HaShoah when I was a student at Brandeis University, we had a 24-hour vigil during Yom HaShoah, in which we volunteered for 1-hour blocks of time or more, simply standing at various places on campus and reading aloud names of Jews who perished in the Holocaust. Even then, not all 6 million names were read. Here are only 10 names of Jews who died in 1945. Irene Schimmel, Leah Kirsch, Imre Schwartz, Shmuel Marmer, František Koenig, Zvi Weiss, Giuseppe Amato, Yitzhak Adler, Solomon Stein, Susie Freim. Each of those 10 names, let them represent 600,000 Jews. Memory is not only about the individuals. It's about the events, the atrocities themselves, and the happenings of the times that unfolded, leading to the possibilities of human beings treating other human beings in such a cruel manner. We remember this history so as never again to repeat it. What else does Yom HaShoah compel me to do? Honor survivors, understanding that there are few left who can share eyewitness experiences of what happened. One story of a survivor is that of Sipora Katz. Her story is shared on the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center website. While hiding from the Nazis in a potato silo in occupied Poland from 1942 to 1944, Sipora had her own good luck charm. Her family was forced to separate, and upon parting, her mother wrapped her in a blanket. During her time in hiding, being subjected to cramped quarters and unimaginable living conditions, Sipora, at the age of 4, looked to her blanket as a friend and comfort. And since Sipora was 4 years old, she was the only member of the family who could actually stand in that potato silo. Everyone else was confined to their knees, and at night they slept like sardines. After the war, her father died in hiding, and she learned that her mother, sister, grandfather, aunts, uncles, and cousins were killed in the Treblinka concentration camp. In 1955, Tzipora moved to the United States, and she has donated her precious blanket to the Illinois Holocaust Museum. In June of 2013, I took a family group through the main exhibit at the Illinois Holocaust Museum, and the docent who guided us showed us the blanket, I remember. And then when we were walking through the museum in the hallway outside of the museum's library, there was Tzipora Katz. She was doing some volunteer work, and she took a moment to explain to us that how she might have passed down that blanket to her grandchildren, but her grandchildren wanted her to donate it to the museum so that more people could see it and learn about her story. A few months later, in October of that year, I read Tzipora Katz's name among the death notices in the Chicagoland area. Remembering the deceased, noting the events that unfold, leading to such atrocities, and honoring the survivors, each and all of these lead to educating ourselves and others. And Yom HaShoah compels me to live my life proudly as a Jew. I feel an incredible privilege that where I live today, I can practice my Judaism at home, in the synagogue, and in other places without the fear of being harmed. There are times when I wear my kippah in public, such as walking through the halls of a hospital making a pastoral call, or at a rally, like at last week's climate justice action at Fountain Square, because I want others to identify me as a Jew. I celebrate holidays and mark life cycle events, even the sad ones, in significant Jewish ways with other people, many of them Jewish, some not, and in the process, I teach. We learn together how Judaism meaningfully marks the cycle of the year and of life. For some, the Shoah, the Holocaust, has been a hook, compelling them to be Jewish and be certain that our heritage survives in the face of those who would have destroyed us. I understand this vision. For me, Yom HaShoah is slightly different. For me, it's a personal and communal time of memory, honoring and teaching, and a reminder to celebrate proudly my Judaism. Achrei mot, after death, then what? Approximately 8 decades after the death of the 6 million Jews who perished during the Shoah, it's not time to be silent. It's a time for us to continue to speak up, remember, mourn, honor, share stories, teach, and proudly live Jewishly for ourselves and for generations to come. Shabbat Shalom.